nobody saw it coming. While every car company on the planet was sprinting toward electric vehicles, pouring billions into batteries, charging networks, and flashy launch events, Honda went quiet. No big announcements, no Super Bowl ads, no Elon-style theatrics, just engineers, closed doors, and a bet that almost everyone in the industry thought was dead. And here's the thing that makes this story worth paying attention to. Honda might be right. But before we get to what Honda is actually building, you need to understand something about where this company comes from. Because this isn't the first time Honda has looked at what everyone else was doing and decided to go a completely different direction. It starts with one man, greasy hands, a bombed-out factory, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Soichiro Honda was born in 1906, the son of a blacksmith in rural Japan. Not exactly the origin story of a global empire. His childhood wasn't spent in classrooms. It was spent surrounded by tools, fixing bicycles, taking engines apart just to see how they worked. Speed obsessed him. Not the polished kind. The raw, mechanical, figure-it-out-yourself kind. His first real business wasn't motorcycles or cars. It was piston rings, tiny engine components that most people couldn't even name. He started a small company in 1937 called Tokai Seiki to supply Toyota. It wasn't glamorous. And then World War II hit. His factory got bombed. Twice. Most people would have walked away. Soichiro didn't. When the war ended, Japan was broken. Fuel was scarce. People needed a cheap, simple way to move around. So Soichiro did what he always did. He looked at what was available and built something no one had thought to build yet. He took leftover military generator engines and strapped them onto bicycles. That was it. That was the beginning. In 1948, Honda Motor Company became official. And what followed wasn't slow, steady growth. It was a rocket. Honda motorcycles started winning races, breaking records, proving that Japan could build machines as fast and tough as anything coming out of Europe or America. Then came the cars. Then the jets. Then Formula One. Today, Honda builds more engines than any other company on Earth. If it moves and has an engine, there's a good chance Honda had something to do with it. But here's why that history matters right now. Honda has never followed the crowd. Not once. And that pattern is about to become very relevant. Because right now, the crowd is moving in one direction. Fast. Electric vehicles went from science fiction to cultural obsession in what feels like overnight. Tesla made them cool. Governments made them political. And suddenly, every car company from Ford to Hyundai was announcing EV lineups like they were dropping album releases. The message was everywhere. Gas is over. Batteries are the future. Get on board or get left behind. And honestly, the momentum is real. Batteries got better. Range improved. Charging got faster. People who once laughed at silent cars started lining up to buy them. But this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Because there's a side of the EV revolution that doesn't get much airtime. Not because it's hidden, but because it complicates a very clean narrative that a lot of powerful people have invested in. Start with the batteries themselves. They're not small, they're not simple, and they're not clean to make. The minerals required, lithium, cobalt, nickel, don't just appear. They get ripped out of the ground in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo and Chile, through mining processes that scar landscapes, contaminate water supplies, and in some cases rely on labor conditions that would make most EV buyers deeply uncomfortable if they thought about it for more than a few seconds. Then there's what happens at the end of a battery's life. We still don't have a great answer for that. Battery recycling exists, but it's expensive, complex, and nowhere near the scale we're going to need. And charging, the thing EVs are supposed to make effortless, is still a real friction point for millions of people. Not everyone lives in a house with a garage. Not everyone can install a home charger. And on a long drive through the wrong part of the country, finding a fast charger isn't a given. Range anxiety isn't just a meme, it's a daily calculation for real drivers. None of this means electric vehicles are bad. They're not. They're a genuine step forward, but they're not the complete answer. And the honest version of this story has to acknowledge that. Honda acknowledged it years ago. Back in 2015, while the EV conversation was just starting to pick up speed, Honda quietly walked into the Tokyo Motor Show with something that stopped people cold. The Honda Clarity fuel cell. It didn't plug in. It didn't run on gasoline. It ran on hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. And the only thing that came out of the tailpipe was water vapor. Clean enough, Honda's engineers half-joked, to drink. The range was 360 miles on a full tank. That beat most electric cars being sold at the time. Refueling took 3 to 5 minutes, about the same as a gas station stop. Inside, it was spacious, smooth, and quiet. Honda had built a fuel cell system compact enough to fit entirely within the engine bay, which was considered nearly impossible at the time. By almost every technical measure, the Clarity was remarkable. And then, almost nobody bought it. Not because it didn't work. It worked beautifully. The problem wasn't the car. It was the world around it. Hydrogen fueling stations were nearly non-existent. California had a handful. Japan had a few more. Everywhere else, essentially nothing. You could own the most technically advanced car on the road and still find yourself stranded, doing the math on whether you could make it to the one station in your region before the gauge hit. Empty. Meanwhile, electric vehicles had something hydrogen didn't. A story. A movement. Elon Musk was making EVs aspirational. Governments were writing massive incentive checks. Charging networks were expanding. The whole cultural and financial weight of the clean energy transition was lining up behind batteries. Hydrogen, by comparison, felt like a science project. Complicated, unfamiliar, easy to dismiss. Honda pulled the Clarity from production in 2021. But here's what most people missed in that moment. Honda didn't abandon hydrogen. They studied the failure. Quietly, carefully, and they started building again. Because the lesson Honda took from the Clarity wasn't that hydrogen doesn't work. The lesson was that being right isn't enough. You also have to be ready. And the world has to be ready with you. So Honda waited. They watched the EV boom play out. They let the hype cycle do what hype cycles do. And while everyone else was racing to stack up battery patents and announce electric lineups, Honda's engineers kept working on the one thing they believed in. Then they found a partner. A big one. General Motors. Two of the most experienced engine companies in the world, pooling their knowledge. Honda's fuel cell expertise and GM's electrical systems engineering, working toward a single goal. Build a hydrogen car that solves every problem the Clarity couldn't. The result is something that, on the outside, looks almost ordinary. It's a CR-V, and that's exactly the point. Honda didn't build a spaceship. They didn't create a concept car that lives in auto shows and never touches a real road. They took one of the most trusted, best-selling family SUVs in the world and put hydrogen technology inside it. Walk up to the CR-V Hydrogen, and it looks like every other CR-V on the road. Same familiar shape. Same comfortable interior. Room for the kids, the groceries, the soccer gear. Nothing that screams experimental technology. But underneath the floor, behind the familiar dashboard, something completely different is happening. Two high-pressure hydrogen tanks sit in the rear, a compact fuel cell system, smaller and more powerful than anything Honda has built before, sits beneath the seats. When you want to drive, hydrogen and oxygen combine in a controlled electrochemical reaction. The output, electricity to power the motor. The byproduct, water vapor. That's it. That's the whole process. No combustion, no emissions, no grid dependency, no rare earth mining. Just hydrogen in, water out, and a car that drives like a Honda. Fill it up in 3 to 5 minutes. Drive up to 400 miles before you need to stop again. And here's a detail that doesn't get enough attention. If the power goes out at your house, this car can run your home. It functions as a backup generator on wheels. In an era of increasingly unstable power grids and extreme weather events, that's not a gimmick. That's genuinely useful. But the car is only half the story. The other half is what's happening in the world around it. Because the timing of Honda's return to hydrogen is not an accident. Hydrogen infrastructure, the thing that killed the Clarity, is finally being built at scale. California now has the largest network of hydrogen stations in North America and is expanding rapidly. Japan has made hydrogen a central pillar of its national energy strategy, not just for cars, but for industry, shipping, and power generation. Germany is building hydrogen corridors to fuel heavy transport trucks. China, the largest car market on Earth, is pouring billions into hydrogen for buses, taxis, and commercial fleets. This isn't pilot programs and press releases anymore. This is infrastructure investment at a government level in multiple countries, simultaneously. And the timing lines up almost perfectly with Honda's relaunch. Meanwhile, the EV infrastructure that everyone assumed would scale infinitely is showing its own stress fractures. Power grids in several U.S. states have already started issuing warnings during peak periods, asking EV owners not to charge during certain hours.